Hi, this is Chaplain Greg with the Wandering Wesleyan and continuing our study of the Gospel of Mark. If you are enjoying this series, please hit the thumbs up button on this video at any other videos that you watch, and please subscribe. I'd love to have more subscriptions. Thank you so much for the thousands of people that are subscribed to this channel. A lot of friends in South Africa. I got a few friends in South Korea and the United States, a few in the United Kingdom. Greetings to everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today. So we are continuing in Mark chapter 5. We have finished the story about a man who was driven crazy by demons, but yet delivered from his affliction of the demonic and set off to be an evangelist to the Gentiles in the Decapolis region. But he's going to head back, and we talked last week about this man named Jairus, who has a very sick little girl, and this is the story we're going to talk about today. But his story is interrupted by another story, a very beautiful story. So let's go to Mark chapter 5, and we're going to start at verse 21. When Jesus crossed over again by boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the sea. Okay, so he's going from the southeastern edge of the Sea of Galilee back up to the northern part, to the Galilean region of Capernaum and that area. It doesn't mention Capernaum specifically, but this is what we are assuming, that he is going back to his home base in that area. Verse 22, one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, "My little daughter is dying. Come, lay hands on her, and she will get well." Jesus went with him, and a large crowd was following, pressing against him. Okay, so the story of Jairus' daughter is fascinating because the man has complete faith that Jesus is going to do this. He recognizes Jesus' authority to heal the sick. Mark provides 4 really important verbs to describe Jairus' actions, and this comes in verses 22 and 23. First of all, he came, erichomai. He came to Jesus. He deliberately went to him, made a trip to him, made an effort to approach Jesus. He came to Jesus. Second, Adon, he saw Jesus. And that means that he had been looking for Jesus. Maybe he had been looking for Jesus since he left for the Decapolis because his little girl was sick. He saw Jesus. He came to Jesus. He saw Jesus. And he fell, pipto. He fell at Jesus' feet. Now think about this. What kind of move is falling at somebody's feet? It's a submissive move. It's an act of submission. It's an act of contrition. It's an act of humility. So here's this guy, Jairus, who is a leader in the synagogue. So he's one of the top guys. He's one of the religious elite that we've been talking about. He recognizes Jesus' authority in his need for his daughter to be healed. He came to Jesus. He saw Jesus. He fell down at Jesus' feet. And lastly, he parakleo. He pleaded with Jesus, giving a direct and specific need. He begged Jesus to save his daughter. And Jesus didn't hesitate. He said, "Yep, let's go." So on he went. Now, we interrupt this story for another story. On the way, something happens. So, verse 24. Read that again. So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd was following and pressing against him. So there were lots of people jostling back and forth. Jesus is being crowded on all sides. Let's read verses 25 through 26. Now, a woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years had endured much under many doctors. She had spent everything, and she was not helped at all. On the contrary, she became worse. Having heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his clothing. For she said to her, probably to herself, for she said, if I just touch his clothes, I will be made well. Instantly, her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was healed of her affliction. So there's an awful lot in those few little verses. Yeah, welcome to Mark. We're going to get that. Lots of stuff densely packed into a short amount of space. So verses 25 through 26. This woman is very, very ill, and she's ceremonially unclean. She is unclean because she's been bleeding, and any loss of blood during a woman's menstrual cycle makes her unclean for that amount of time. It's a reminder of life leaving the body or death. That's why she hasn't sinned by bleeding, obviously, but it makes her ceremonially unclean because there's a reminder of death coming out of her. So heavy bleeding going on for 12 years. She went to many doctors, spent all her money, and got worse. So here's the thing. In the Talmud, there are 11 possible cures for a condition like this. They're all really nasty, really expensive, and in today's modern medicine, if we were to look at them, we would think, oh my goodness, how did this woman survive the treatments that she was given for these? Because they're just all awful. Because she was ceremonially unclean, she was shunned by her community. She was desperate. For 12 years, she's shunned and thrown away by her community. But she approached Jesus. This is risk. This is a huge, huge risk, because she shouldn't be anywhere near this scene if she is ceremonially unclean. She goes to see him. She sees him. So she came, she saw, she fell at his feet. And what did he do? What did she do? She touched the little hem of his garment, the tzitzit. So look at Numbers 15:38 through 40. It'll talk about what the tzitzit is, which is a little prayer fringe hanging off of his prayer shawl. Okay? She came, she saw, she fell at his feet because she didn't believe she was worthy of this, but was going to try anyway. Her faith, she knows that his presence can heal her. Touching even this little tzitzit, this little hem of his garment, she was healed. So what was it that healed the woman? Was it her faith? Was it his clothing? Was it the presence of Jesus? I think it was all three. Because the clothing was on Jesus, and because the tzitzit represents heaven and earth together, represents the prayer, all of this, her faith, the presence of Jesus, and the prayer of the prayer shawl, go into healing. Now, and she was healed. Now let's go to verse 30. Immediately, Mark's favorite word, euthos, immediately, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing against you, and you say, 'But who touched me?'" But he was looking around to see who had done this. The woman, with fear and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed from your affliction." All right. So much there. Okay, Jesus looks for the woman. He knows power has gone out. Healing energy has come out of him. Ministry costs. It costs physically. We saw that when he was sleeping in the boat a couple of videos ago. He was sleeping in the boat, exhausted from ministry. So he felt this power come out from him. There's lots of people jostling him, but there was one person who was touching him in faith that she would be healed. And that was this woman at his feet. And there's a beautiful, beautiful painting in a chapel in Magdala in Israel, and I'll show a picture of it here, of that scene. It's a beautiful painting. I haven't been to Magdala yet. We'll wait till people are a little bit more calmed down from their fussing and feuding over there before we go back. One of my dreams, by the way, is to do a Wandering Wesleyan series in Israel. So we'll keep praying about that and see if that actually happens. But this painting that you see here is a beautiful painting and reminder of the touch of his tzitzit, of his garment. So Jesus interacts with the woman, and the woman is afraid. Why was she afraid? Well, it's for very good reasons. She's ceremonially unclean. She shouldn't have been in the crowd in the first place. And she was touching a rabbi who was a man. All of these are forbidden cultural, religious taboos, and she's breaking them all. She believed it was against all the rules, all of these cultural rules and norms, to do what she did, but she did it anyway in her desperation. What does that tell you? That sometimes our rules and regulations get in the way. We talked about this when we talked about the disciples picking heads of grain on the Sabbath. Our little rules and regulations that we make up that aren't in Scripture sometimes, oftentimes, get in the way of the principle behind the law, the principles behind these rules. It's always to be good. It's always to do good. So this woman bucked all the social, religious, and political conventions and did what she did, and she was rewarded for it. Jesus addresses the woman as daughter. This was a term of deep endearment reserved only for very close relationships, from a father figure to a daughter figure. This passage is the only time that Jesus uses this word for a woman. Daughter, your faith has saved you. Her faith, her pistis, produced healing. Now, was it her actions that saved her? No. She took actions to receive the gift that was waiting for her. See, the gift was given to her. She had to go get it. All right, she didn't earn that gift. She didn't earn that healing. But her faith, her trust in Jesus allowed that gift to be activated in her life and be healed. Jesus dismisses her with shalom, go in peace. Shalom, shalom. Be freed from suffering. Jesus permits her to live in the healing that was provided to her from his presence because of her faith. It's a beautiful story. And I hope it encourages you to think about the healings that you may need in your life. And we're not done yet. We still got another story that we're working on, right? Jairus and his daughter. Well, let's get back to that. So John, back to our main story. Verse 35. While he, Jesus, was still speaking, people came from the synagogue leader's house and said, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" Bad news. Jairus is told that his daughter is dead. There have been suggestions that the daughter wasn't actually dead, that it was just faking as a part of the story. Look, if he's told by these people that the daughter is dead, the daughter is dead. And we have some good evidence for that coming up in the next couple of verses. Verse 36. When Jesus overheard what was said, he told the synagogue leader, "Don't be afraid, only believe, only have faith." Here we have a woman who has just been healed because of her faith. And he's looking at Jairus and saying, "Don't worry, have faith, trust me." All right, verses 37 through the first part of 40. When Jesus overheard what was said, he told the synagogue leader, "Don't be afraid, only believe." Verse 37. He did not let anyone accompany him except Peter, James, James, and John, James's brother. They came to the leader's house and saw a commotion with people weeping and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why are you making such a commotion and weeping? The child is dead. The child is not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him, but he put them all outside. All right. So Jesus takes the big three, Peter, James, and John, with Jairus, probably, all going up to the room where this woman had died. And Mark describes a commotion. There's a lot of weeping and wailing. Well, who are these people that are weeping and wailing? It seems weird to us now, but there was a custom and tradition that you needed to have much weeping and wailing in your household for it to be authentic sorrow. So folks of means, and Jairus being a high official in the synagogue and probably a man with lots of means, would hire or have his household hire professional mourners who would come and would weep and wail. They wouldn't know the situation. They'd have no emotional investment in the situation or in the little girl or in the family, but they were paid to wail and weep and make a lot of noise and commotion. This is one of the reasons why we know this girl was dead, because you wouldn't hire professional mourners if you didn't believe or know that there was a dead person there. And this little girl had died. They went out, they hired the professional mourners. They were there, they started their business. They were doing a very terrific job of making a commotion and letting everybody know that there's sorrow and despair in that household. They're professional mourners because we know that their mood changes very quickly as soon as Jesus says she's not dead, she's asleep. They start laughing at him. Well, how do you go from mourning and wailing to laughter? It doesn't make any sense. These were professional mourners. The enemy wants to distract us from the promise of healing that Jesus offers. He laughs at our hope of healing and restoration. So while we have maybe some fake friends around us who mourn for us falsely, when we tell them about the healing of Jesus, if they laugh at us, maybe they're not as genuine friends as we thought. But the enemy is even worse. When we say, "I believe in the hope and healing I have in Jesus," he just says, "Nah." He puts that seed of doubt in our brain. And that seed of doubt is demonic in nature. It's not from Jesus. Believe, have faith in Jesus. Doesn't mean that everybody is healed on this side of eternity, but it does mean that there is ultimate healing and ultimate restoration and resurrection in Jesus. So let's take the end of verse 40 to verse 42. "Why are you making such a commotion with weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." Okay, that's verse 38. They laughed at him and he put them all outside. Said, "Get out of here. You're not doing anybody any good." He took the child's father, mother, and those that were with him, Peter, James, and John, and entered the place where the child was. He entered the death room. Remember, being with a dead body makes you ceremonially unclean. So as soon as they went to the room with the dead body, they were all unclean. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which is an Aramaic phrase translated, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately, euthos, the girl got up, began to walk. She was 12 years old. Hang on to that. She was 12 years old. At this, they were utterly astounded. All right, Jesus took only the girl's parents and the 3 disciples into the death room. Peter, James, and John. And so dozens of people and disciples are his followers, maybe hundreds. But out of these, he chose 12 to be his inner circle and 3 to be his innermost circle, Peter, James, and John. They would have been considered immediately unclean when they came into the death room with the body. But Jesus commanded, in a very gentle way, that the girl be revived. She was revived, not resurrected. Okay, so resurrection, only Jesus is one who has experienced resurrection. So Lazarus and this little girl were revived because they had the same body. Eventually they died, and so a resurrected body never dies. That's what we're promised at the end of the age. That's what we're promised when the kingdom of God comes into his fullness with the return of Jesus. So she was revived, and notice her age. She was 12. The woman who was healed had been bleeding for 12 years. There's a thought, and there's no biblical evidence of this, but there's a thought that this girl could be the daughter of the woman, maybe Jairus' wife. Maybe there's a connection there. That's why the stories are together. That's why the number 12 is there. Who knows? Something to think about. Verse 43, proof of life. Then they gave them strict orders that no one should know about this. Again, they're hiding this thing for the Jews because it's not Jesus' time yet, and told them to give her something to eat. So for these two stories, notice that the main characteristics are a man of high social standing and an outcast woman. The recipients of healing are both women. Both are ritually unclean and could cause others around them to be unclean. Jesus heals with his touch, whether it's an intended touch, like grabbing the girl's hand, and life going from him into her who was dead, making her clean. Uncleanness doesn't go from her to him. Cleanliness goes from him to her. Or by an unintentional touch, by a woman falling at his feet and touching his garments, where clean life goes from him and death does not go from her. Death is expelled from her. Jesus brings us not only physical healing, but inner spiritual healing, healing of memories, trauma, emotions, whatever our pain is, whatever our hurt is, whatever our sin is, whatever is going on in our lives. Jesus is ready to heal, restore, and renew all of us. When we receive the healing of Jesus, we receive his shalom, we receive his peace, and we receive his promise. And that's a good place to end for today. So if you're enjoying these videos, please like and subscribe. Click that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, put a comment. I'd love to know what you're thinking, I'd love to know how this passage has affected you. But until next week, this is Wandering Wesleyan Greg, Chaplain Greg. Be blessed.